In a world where everyone and their brother has a podcast, one stands alone. It's been called one of the podcasts of all time. Welcome to Internet Killed the Video Store.
Did you hear that NSYNC is using Trolls 3 as like a launch pad for their reunion?
No.
Justin Timberlake's self-esteem has fallen far enough for him to do an NSYNC reunion, and they're kind of like soft launching it with their new single that's going to be part of the new Trolls movie.
Oh my gosh.
It just sounds so sad.
Are they going to be characters in the film, or is it just
I don't know.
Like, are they going to be the gnome version of NSYNC?
I would think so.
Or Trolls or what?
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Because Timberlake's been in all three of them. I don't know if you're up on the Trolls franchise.
Oh,
but
no, I didn't know that. Okay.
the new one is called Trolls Band Together. So I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of NSYNC tie-in since that single is like released to promote the movie.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What do they do for live shows when they play that song? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
they got like the crazy hair and like they do like a whole wardrobe.
got to do a costume change. Yeah, they can make it work. You're right.
Maybe that was the stipulation. Like Timberlake's like, I don't want to fucking tour and deal with the hysteria, but like if we can do like motion capture and just tour us performing as trolls in like movie theaters, then I'm down, guys.
Right.
Like, all right.
There you go.
JT's in.
Man.
Yeah, there was like a succession of 3 really weird headlines of like the NSYNC first single in 20 years to promote Trolls 3, U2 doing like a Vegas residency since they're like the big prestige act of the early 90s, and they're just like, rocking out in the Vegas Dome.
Right.
Oh yeah, and then we got Tom DeLonge's Alien Invasion movie, which I'm way more interested in now than his Blink-182 return, because that looks awesome.
More interesting than the other headlines as well.
Yeah. I'm definitely
not just the 2 you mentioned, but anything that's come out lately.
Yeah, that's my October now.
Man, that trailer just killed me. I never thought I would hear like the trailer music version, the bullshit modern trend of just like take a hook from a pop song and put some big ass drums with it and you're good.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. And they did it with that stupid Alien.
Yeah, Aliens
Not
Exist.
stupid. I like that song.
That's the good one, man. I'm definitely there for that.
Oh, it's unreal. Yeah. So how big a part of that movie is Tom DeLonge?
I mean,
write it, direct it?
Is writing and directing it a big part? Because that's his credits.
Wow. I mean, it didn't like, I'm not going to say that it looked like the most professional movie from the trailer.
Yeah.
Like it does kind of give you a sense of like something's not right here, even if you don't know anything about Blink-182. But
yeah.
But it looked, what's the word?
Competent?
Competent. That's exactly the word I was looking for.
It's not like he ran around and shot it on his phone. Like, it looks professional.
Looks better than The Idol.
Yeah, that's legit. I'd give it that.
Yeah. Gotta compare him to Tesfaye, dude.
Yeah, for sure. I will finish that, for sure. I'm not going to finish The Idol. I will definitely finish Monsters of California.
Right. It's only gonna be, I'll bet it's like 3 hours or something.
It's probably like 80 minutes. Like it's not even like
Yeah. That's better. Yeah.
I
That's
guess
more likely.
It started out as a music video for the new album, and Mark was like, dude, this is too long. Fuck you guys. I got a script down. I'll get some real actors, do it myself.
Yeah. Probably just about how it went down. It's just amazing that it's taken him this long to do it, right? I mean, I guess he's just been powering up, but
yeah,
like you said, I mean, that song is from forever ago.
Yeah,
That was like his confession. I've been abducted.
He's had the truth. I mean, the truth's been out there the whole time. He's been telling us for years, and now we finally got like legit. You know what?
Oh, you think he's kind of capitalizing on like the recent
I think
aliens
so.
craze?
Yeah, like hey, here we go.
Right. Yeah, that makes it seem a little less genuine to me.
Yeah,
You know, like
that's true.
if he really fucking cared about it, he would have just done it before all that stuff.
Maybe he was like, I don't want this to trivialize my real research I've been doing. But now it's like, well, this guy's gonna fucking tell everybody anything anyway. I'm gonna make a movie about it. And
Right. Yeah, there you go.
but yeah, we never talked about Riot Fest. How was that? Was that your second Riot Fest?
Yeah, the first was the one that we went to together. Do you remember what year that was?
We went in 2016.
2016
for the Misfits reunion.
Right, which was awesome.
Yeah. So you went this year, met up with some people?
Yeah, I didn't really plan on going. I mean,
right on.
I thought I might get to go for work for the radio station I work for, but there wasn't much talk of that, and I'm too new there to be like, yo, send me to Riot Fest for $200 a day or whatever. So
right, yeah.
Or I guess it wasn't that much, but you know, some friends were coming up to Chicago for it, so I was like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with them, and it was fun. I mean, there were some great bands on Saturday. Death Grips, who you've also seen recently.
Yeah.
And I thought they just put on a hell of a show, and it was so cool to see. They had a huge crowd. I mean, they were playing the main stage, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I had no like real idea of how big a band they were. So it was cool to see. And there were like a bunch of people younger than me that were tearing it up for Death Grips, like knew all the words and stuff off of like the old records. I mean, they played a lot of old stuff.
Yeah.
And people were singing along to all the words, and it was interesting seeing how a band like that performs live, you know, because they're just mostly electronic on the record.
Yeah.
Live, you have this unreal drummer playing his kit the whole time. Like
that was insane.
It is, man. That guy, I think when we were talking about it, you said that you were tired just watching him. And there's no breaks.
An hour straight.
Yeah, he's just like a film machine too. I've never seen so many snare rolls and so many different kinds of snare rolls. So that was cool. And, you know, guitar player doing his thing with awesome looking pedal board, and MC Ride. That guy just has such a cool energy on stage.
Oh yeah, he's fearless.
Yeah, he's really cool. So every once in a while, he would just do this like he'd just really lean into the mic and do this high pitched scream.
Yeah.
And like every time the crowd just went nuts.
Lost it. Yeah.
So, man, saw them. They kind of overlapped with Pup a little bit, who I would have liked to see more of, but it was cool. It was cool to see Pup. I caught the end of their set. And Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh, gotcha.
Who, I mean, it was fine. I like that band, and they were playing Transatlanticism.
Oh, right.
Which is the album that, you know,
that's the Death
we
Cab,
all know from. Yeah, yeah, that was a fun one to listen to, but it's kind of just chill and melancholy, and we didn't really have the best view of them either. But kind of an anticlimactic set. But Queens of the Stone Age followed that up.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best live shows I've seen.
Oh, damn.
I mean, the band was just on point, so good. All 5 of them are just incredible musicians. And then the lights were really cool. I mean, I usually don't give a shit about that stuff, but it looked great.
Yeah.
And another thing I usually don't really care about is the video that they play on like the big screens, but we were far enough back that it was like, all right, I'm looking at these some of the time, you know, as you do. And the cuts were on point, dude. They were doing these great fades between, I mean, they had a bunch of different cameras going, so you were getting to see a lot of different stuff, but it was just really like tastefully done, and it just added to the whole thing.
So it wasn't like not pre-prepared, it was like live footage of them up on the video board.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's cameras up there like filming the people. I mean, I think they were doing that for all the main stage bands.
Gotcha.
And it was nice, because if you were far enough back, that was a nice thing to have. And then I left before what's the other Death Cab for Cutie thing? Postal Service.
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So they
It was so hard getting there.
Yeah.
Like, I think I told you, I waited for like 3 different trains because there were so many punks. It was just hundreds of punks at the train station.
Yeah.
And the trains just get packed and you just can't fit onto them.
Right.
So after waiting for like 2 or 3 trains, I don't remember if I actually got on or just like ended up walking there. I think I walked.
Yeah.
And then I ended up walking home, which took me like almost an hour. But I'll bet I got home before the people that were waiting around for an Uber.
Yeah.
So,
no, it is kind of like there's not a great way to get there and like park or like quickly travel to the park. It's kind of a shit show. Like when everybody gets out at 10 o'clock and is trying to get an Uber and the surge charge is hit.
yep.
Just the volume of that festival's gotten pretty wild. Like,
Yeah.
the first one we went to, I think, was 2008, and it was in like an abandoned movie theater downtown, and Leftover Crack was the headliner. So
Wow.
that tells you. And it was like one day. So it's cool that it's grown this big.
It is cool. I wish they could figure out a way to be less of an issue for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because it's held in a place where, like, I don't know. I don't think there are a lot of people in that area that are interested in Riot Fest, and then they're just dealing with noise pollution, like heavy noise pollution for
a weekend,
a whole weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very valid. I know there was a little bit of concern about if they're actually going to get their permit renewed this summer because there was such pushback from the neighborhood. So
yeah,
that could be something going forward to watch.
Well, I'd like to see it get figured out in a way that is good for everybody. I mean, maybe they can find a better location for it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Oh yeah, we've got a couple things to circle back to. So LiveNation announced shortly after Jeff Rosenstock made a stink that they are doing away with merch cuts at their venues, and they're also handing out a $1,500 travel stipend to every performer, opener, headliner, on top of what they're being paid for their performance for gas and food. So it's pretty awesome to see that like actually make a difference.
Just did not expect that at all.
No, not from that company.
No, it's a big swing in the right direction from what it looks like. So
yeah, no, that was awesome.
Cool.
And then we just had the writer's strike allegedly come to an end. So it looks
Right.
like a lot of the concessions they were asking for are going to be met as far as like keeping writers' rooms so that people can develop instead of just hiring people freelance out for projects.
Yeah.
AI is not going to generate any stuff, at least until the deal's up in 3 years. And
Right.
they did actually establish like a residual program so that like regular broadcast TV, they will be paid based on streaming performance, and some of those performance-based contract incentives can still be met. The caveat of that is it's not going to be like publicly announced still, I guess, so the streamers can still keep that little secret and I guess just have the mirage of their valuation based on subscribers, not actually what people are watching or how much of it. But that also,
I was wondering,
that also kind of entrusts the platforms to be honest about their numbers, since there's no, like, they're disclosing it directly to the directors and writers and actors. So I think that
it'll come out now.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and it
even
gets
if they're not making it public, like.
Yeah, well, yeah, it'll come out eventually, but it also kind of makes it murky that you're just trusting the numbers that they're giving them. There's no other, like, checks and balances if you're just getting the information from Netflix.
That is a bit sketchy.
Instead of, like, like the box office report we talked about, like, that's pretty easy to measure metric for how many people are buying tickets.
Right.
So,
yeah,
it seems like it's a good push in the right direction. As of this recording, we haven't had any news on the actors yet, but I would think that's probably not too far behind. There's I think it was like an October 1st deadline for the writers to have any hope of like a scripted TV season. So I think that was probably the push to get that under and get that done. So it is kind of nice that like usually the pushback is just, oh, these rich actors or these rich Hollywood people, who cares? But like there's such an unrest and like nationwide labor crisis across like, the auto industry, Amazon, everywhere, that like, no, these guys need to pay their employees.
Yeah, it sets a good precedent.
Right.
It is weird that it ends up being that industry that does it first, but whatever, if it works. I hope it's something that like a lot of people have been paying attention to, or at least people start to hear about it now. Because I want the unions, across the board to have more success. So
right, yeah, it would have been pretty defeating if even like Hollywood was gonna stand firm and just starve their people out.
Yeah, think about being, on the GM picket line, and then you hear that like that shit happened.
Right.
All right, well,
if they think all those people are disposable, how are we supposed to feel?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a step in the right direction, I think. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess what new music did you listen to? Did you finish that Baroness record?
Oh gosh. Oh, we're talking Baroness.
We don't have to, because I don't think
we
both talked about how bad the new Baroness and Code Orange records were, but I don't know if either of us finished them. Did we?
I don't think I finished either of them. I listened to much more of the Baroness album.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's stuff I like in it, but I think I told you this. I feel like they have just continued to want to hone in on fewer and fewer ideas. They're trying out some new stuff on this record, but Baroness has always had these staples that they come back to.
Yeah.
Like they have this great, like, fat harmonized guitar riff on the Blue album, which is their second album. And every time, like, I hear a new Baroness, at least one time on the album, they try to kind of repeat that same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being too picky, but March to the Sea was kind of that thing. Everyone loved that song. It's a cool song, but I was like, okay, cool. You kind of iterated on that idea from Blue album. But then by the time you get to where we are now, it almost felt like every other song is like, yeah, let's do that fat harmonized guitar riff.
Yeah.
And, if you're doing it in a different way, that's cool. But it feels like the same part to me a lot of the time.
Right.
So
it's like they're trying to recreate the same song, and it's like March to the Sea is like the best version of that. You guys have been trying to recreate that for a while, and it's just like, that was it.
Mining their own stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's some cool stuff on it. I do love their new guitar player. I forget what her name is, but she does backing vocals in the band now, and I feel like that's a nice addition because you can. It's not like subtle backing vocals where you don't get any of the character of the person singing and it just blends in with the lead singer. It feels like she has a distinct voice that's on the record. It would have been cool, honestly, to hear her take lead and have John Baisley just step back a little bit, because he doesn't have a lot he can do as a singer, and he doesn't scream as much anymore.
Yeah.
And that he was really good at screaming, and I know that gets hard as you get older, but yeah, it would be nice to have some more variety. So I'm still going to keep checking in with Baroness every time they put out a record. I love Red and Blue so much.
Yeah, those are great. Now, I stuck it out and finished the Code Orange record, and it wasn't...
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't as bad as the first track. Like, that is literally the worst thing I've ever heard them do. I don't know why you'd use that as your opener. Maybe just to, like, rip the Band-Aid off and be like, shit's gonna get weird. Strap in. But, yeah, from there on out, like, it's kind of just like, I don't know, bro metal with the occasional rap verse or something weird thrown in, but...
Okay.
Yeah, they're still real weird. I don't know if they've been like contracted out by WWE just to make like beat down workout music or what, but it's strange.
Huh. I'm not really sold by that description.
Yeah.
Of like bro metal with rap verses thrown in.
I'm not trying to sell it. I guess just it's not the worst thing you've ever heard. It does have a coherence eventually emerge.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that opener, like, I was like, oh god, there's an hour of this?
Holy shit. That thing is rough.
It's very rough, yes. Things like click back into track eventually. There's still some weird shit, but that's very wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, what we've been too negative. We need to go positive here. What do you think of
Yeah,
Oneohtrix
I know.
Point
I always
Never?
feel bad. Well, I mean, it was excellent.
Yeah.
That's the
Of course.
thing. He's so good. He's like maybe my favorite electronic artist.
Yeah.
And it's kind of dumb to say because I haven't listened to like his whole discography. I listened to his old records a lot, and I've kind of fallen off of some of the more recent stuff. Sometimes he'll post a single and it has a bunch of like singing in it, like he's featuring someone.
Oh yeah.
And it always just gives me anxiety because like that is kind of usually the death of electronic musicians that I like is when they get to this point where they're like, well, I gotta have a singer. Like I gotta, yeah, I'm poppy now.
Right. That's true.
This record, it has some of that. It has some vocals, but usually they're like also affected in some strange way. They have like cool effects on them and glitchy stuff. And this album is great. It's doesn't feel too dissimilar from the other records I like, which came out a while ago. Let me see really quick. R+7, which came out in 2013, is one that I like a lot. Didn't get into I know he did the soundtrack for that. Wasn't it that Robert Pattinson movie?
Yeah, he's worked with the
Good Time.
He's worked with the Safdie brothers on Good Time and Uncut Gems.
Did you like what he did on those?
Yeah, I really liked the Uncut Gems score. And this this record in particular, I feel like is the most that feels kind of like movie scorey, where it made me want to hear him do some more soundtrack work. So I saw the Safdie brothers are working on another Adam Sandler movie. Hopefully he gets to come along for the ride and do the music, because I think that'd be killer.
For sure. This record made me want to play D&D.
Yeah.
So, which it's like, oh man, this would be such a good D&D soundtrack. This makes me want to world build, you know?
Yeah.
It really got my imagination going. So, yeah, and I don't know, it's cool. It doesn't feel unobtainable from a production standpoint. Like, at least the synth stuff, a lot of it is pretty basic, and he's done that throughout his career.
Yeah.
But he can make really, really simple stuff sound cool. It doesn't always have to be some crazy synth patch. Other times, it is like, holy shit, this guy is so good at what he does, and I have no idea how he put this together. Also, I haven't heard as much of like acoustic instruments in his music before this album.
Yeah.
But the orchestral stuff and like, you know, the flutes and stuff, all that stuff blends really well. And he'll just put like a really basic like square lead over it, you know. Sounds like a Nintendo square lead, but I love that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be listening to this one a lot more.
Yeah, it's really cool balance, because I feel like a lot of his stuff, he's always so experimental and just like throwing stuff against the wall. But this one, it doesn't abandon that at all. Like, it's still very experimental, but it's also very like cinematic, and also feels like just narratively like takes you through each song by song.
It does.
It has more of a structure than just like somebody doing crazy synth patches and doing weird noise experiments. But it's, there's a cohesiveness there that I think is really cool. And
for sure,
it's just strange that he's able to balance that cohesion with really experimental off the wall stuff at times.
Yeah.
Because like you said, he's got that, what is it, Crumville, the fourth track, where it does open up like acoustic guitar and a guy singing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I've heard him do that before. That was really interesting. And
right.
I saw him explain this record as, I think he said, autobiographical sonic collage. So it's like going through all of his inspirations as a young adult.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was a really cool way to contextualize the record, because you can kind of see all the different things he pulls from, and you wouldn't think would work well together, but they kind of do.
That's really cool. Yeah, it does feel like the album is telling you something when you listen to it. Or a lot of things. Right.
And there's like, I don't know. I feel like one of the worst things you can be like in electronic music is just to have a really flat, basic sounding, out of the box sound.
Right.
And his stuff always has such a depth to it that I don't feel like you find in a lot of other artists, which I really appreciate.
This one in particular, there's so much layering and things just kind of phasing in and out, and big dynamic range. Like, it gets really loud, it gets really quiet, it stops almost completely at certain points.
Yeah.
Almost like a classical song would, or like soundtrack. I think you put it well, comparing it to that. Yeah, I'd like to see. I mean, I'm always happy when Oneohtrix Never does something, so more movies would be cool.
The only other thing I was going to ask you about was the Expendables. Did you ever watch any of that series?
The Expendables?
Yeah.
Oh, the
Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Statham.
I saw some of one of them like in a hotel room. I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah.
We started like in the middle of it. It wasn't the first one, so it made it even harder to know what was going on. Or actually, I take that back. I'm sure that we knew exactly what was going on, because how could you not in a movie like that?
Right.
It's pretty fucking basic, but
yeah.
So no. Short answer is no. What's up?
Oh,
do you like those?
I like the second one, but they've just gotten so bad. Like the whole premise was like, let's get all these action stars and put them in a movie together. But now, like, Stallone's not even in it. Obviously, Bruce Willis isn't in it.
Right.
Schwarzenegger's not in it. Jet Li's not there. So it's just like Jason Statham, Megan Fox, and 50 Cent. Like, that's not an all-star cast.
No, that's way past its prime.
Right.
There was one where they had so many people. I remember the poster was just like, we brought everyone back, and now we got Dolph.
Yeah. The second and third one.
Wesley Snipes or something. I don't know.
But yeah, I was going to ask you, because you probably don't even really like... It doesn't register with you when it's like, oh shit, Stallone and Schwarzenegger made a movie together. So, like, who would be your... Max's Expendables team if you're putting like action all-stars together?
Oh my gosh. Has Jackie Chan ever been in any of them?
He's not, no.
Then they fucked up, because that's all you need. Jackie Chan can beat the shit out of everyone in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's my action hero. And then, oh man. I mean, I loved Sean Connery as Bond.
Yeah.
That was my favorite Bond, but it's kind of rough picturing like even him in his prime, just because of how film was done back then, like versus how it was done in the 80s when those guys were making films. Like, I just can't picture Sean Connery like beating up
the Predator.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or like any of the foes that they faced in their films.
Right.
Picture him as Rocky.
I just want to see him like out in the woods with the Predator now. That's a good visual.
Hell yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
For sure.
When the strike goes the other way, and Hollywood studios get their way on AI and deep fake and stuff, and they just start taking Sean Connery and doing crazy shit with him.
Just buy the likeness of everybody. Yeah, that Expendables will be great. They'll be like James Dean driving a motorcycle with Sean Connery in the little sidecar.
It'll just be some app where you can like make it yourself. It's like, who do you want to play the Predator?
Right. It'll be a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
My Expendables are...
Who are yours? Like, who's your... I mean,
know.
I'm assuming your favorite would be from one of the movies already, but did they miss...
I mean, you got to rope in Keanu if you're going to go young at some point, right?
Yeah.
You can't go Megan Fox and 50 Cent if you're trying to get the new generation of action stars.
50 Cent?
Yeah.
The rapper?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
That's not the route to go. But yeah, you got to get Keanu in there. I'm a big Schwarzenegger guy, so I'm always glad to see him in there.
I liked him a lot growing up. Yeah. We watched his movies a fair
Kurt
amount.
Russell. He's always good, even though he doesn't have a lot of franchises, but I like Kurt Russell. Other than that, we don't have a lot of new action stars. Chris Hemsworth is getting up there after Extraction. That was good.
Chris Hemsworth came to mind as like, okay, we can probably do younger than Keanu.
Right. That's true.
He's not that young.
Yeah.
I think it'd have to be Hemsworth, because I don't like most of the other action stars. There's that do you know who Scott Adkins is?
No.
He's kind of cool. He's like a kickboxer, and he shows up in stuff sometimes. He was in the newest John Wick.
Oh, wait, was he the big guy?
Wearing the fat suit, which is kind of dumb. But
he looked like a video game boss.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you get to see him do his thing in that movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like him, but I don't think he's particularly young either, but
Yeah.
he's cool.
We're not making new stars anymore. It's just all Keanu got to come back. That's the young guy on the block.
Right. Did you watch the movie that I told you about the other night?
Oh, shit, no, I didn't. The Pope's Exorcist?
Yeah.
No, how is it? I can tell from your laugh.
You don't need to, yeah.
Speaking of
Watch
falls
like
from...
the last... Who? Russell Crowe?
Falls from Grace, yeah. Poor Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Was he like best actor 2 or 3 years in a row with Gladiator and Beautiful Mind, and now it's the Pope's Exorcist.
Dude, he's pretty great in it though.
Yeah.
Like he knows what he's doing. Yeah.
He knows what he's signed up for.
His Italian accent is incredible. Which is fun, but like, man, honestly, it's just, again, like after watching The Exorcist recently, it was just like, okay, this possessed child in this movie doesn't do anything I haven't seen before. He does less.
Yeah.
It made me realize The Exorcist works well because you're so upset at seeing this girl go through all this stuff, and not just the exorcism stuff, but like the spinal taps and everything that happens. It's so upsetting. This movie like doesn't get that. So the kid like gets possessed and like scratches his face one time and then spends the rest of the movie just being like, oh yeah, I'm the devil. I'm the fucking devil. And it's just this kid actor having to like try to sell you on this stuff, and nothing against him, because I don't think we should expect child actors to have to be the villain in a horror movie.
Yeah,
and like,
that's a lot.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, there's some fun Russell Crowe stuff, but I was so bored for most of it, and I was like falling asleep. And then
so wait, is Russell Crowe the Pope?
What?
Is he need the Exorcist? What are the
Dude? No, prepare to be so disappointed, because right, you think the Pope's getting exorcised in this thing?
Yeah.
No, he is the guy. He is the guy that does exorcisms, who is also the Pope's like right-hand man.
Oh, so it's
so like
the Pope's haircut. You're like working for the Pope.
Right.
Okay.
And you get a little bit of the Pope. They cut to him sometimes poring over like old text, and he's like talking about how bad things are going. And he's like, oh man, these demons are bad news. And I'm worried about Russell Crowe.
You're about these demons? I mean, geez.
Right. But yeah, no, I was like falling asleep. And then all of a sudden I realized they're in like what looks like a fantasy film. They're in like this cave or weird, like ritual location. And some pretty wild action stuff started popping off.
Oh,
which,
dang.
like the movie had not really set a precedent for.
Nice.
But I liked that,
Yeah.
you know. There was not enough of it, but I'm like, man, I kind of hope they make a sequel to this movie and realize, kind of in the way that Evil Dead realized, that it should just do comedy. Like that's what I want this to
Turn
do.
it into
Just
an
lean
action
totally
adventure.
into it. Yeah, yeah. Just lean in.
Well, it's called.
So
Yeah, maybe they'll do it like the A Haunting in Venice, and like he just goes and does exorcisms for high-ranking officials all over the world.
right.
It'll be like the president's baptism or something, you know?
Elon Musk's Exorcist.
Yeah. That sounds like a great movie.
Oh,
I should
man.
watch it though, because we need more like worst tier stuff. We're coming up on the end of the year.
Yeah.
That'll fit in bottom tier, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe mid. I
Mid?
don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I know. I saw our worst album of the year losers from last year. Just Friends put out another record this year, and part of me was like, "Ooh, do I listen to it just to have them in there again?" I was like, "No, I gotta let it go. It's too mean to seek it out, hoping it's awful again."
But we gotta give them a second chance at the same time, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I hope it's good. I want it
Do
to
we
be
listen?
good. I was more positive on right now.
Yeah, just pull it up. What do you got going on?
My dog is going to bark. Come here. My dog is going to bother us.
We got to meet the dog.
It's his choice.
Okay.
He's been obstreperous today. I took away his car privileges and he hasn't forgiven me.
Oh yeah.
He loves to drive, but he goes too fast. Anyway, Hi guys.
How you doing?
It's good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Good.
All right. So today with us, we've got Nat Segaloff, author of The Exorcist Legacy, 50 Years of Fear. So we want to talk to you today a little bit about the release of the original. You worked as a publicist for the original film, correct?
I was the local guy in Boston handling publicity for the theater chain that was showing it. And it was kind of an adventure.
Yeah, I imagine. Was it kind of unconventional for Friedkin to be following up The French Connection with a horror film after winning Best Picture?
I can't speak for Billy. I know that he wanted to do whatever was interesting, but he did have a connection with William Peter Blatty, who had written The Exorcist. And in fact, they both came together, much to Warner Brothers' disgust, because they didn't want to have Billy Friedkin do it. When William Friedkin was just starting out in Hollywood, this is in the middle 60s, he was given an appointment to see Blake Edwards, a major writer, producer, director, who was going to be doing a feature film version of his television series, Peter Gunn, which I'm sure nobody watching this remembers, but it was a big private detective. And he was shown the script, and Billy came in and said to Blake Edwards, "This is the worst piece of crap I've ever read." And Blake, this is a kid who was just starting out in the business. Right. And he had the guts to say that to Blake Edwards, a major creator. So Blake Edwards says, "That's interesting. Perhaps you'd like to explain it to the writer. He's sitting just outside." So Edwards summoned the writer in, and the writer was William Peter Blatty, who had been writing comedies for Blake Edwards. And Edwards said to Billy, "Okay, tell the writer the same thing you told me." And Billy said, "I think this is a big piece of crap." And Bill Blatty started laughing by saying, "I agree with you, and nobody here has had the guts to tell me." Well, Blake Edwards went on and made the film himself, and it was a piece of crap. But Blatty never forgot Friedkin. And so when he finished writing The Exorcist, he sent it to Billy, who was on a publicity tour for the French Connection at that point. Billy read it. He even canceled a dinner appointment to finish reading the book and said, "I want to do this movie." Blatty said, "I want you to do this movie." And everybody was in favor of it except Warner Brothers. Then The French Connection was released, and Warner Brothers wanted to be in the William Friedkin business.
So who were some of the names that Warner Brothers were kicking around to direct it?
Oh, anybody who was hot. Arthur Penn was offered it at one point. I know Arthur, and he didn't even consider it. I'm sure they wanted John Borman to direct it, which is kind of an interesting decision, is what happened later. But anybody who was on the flavor of the month list was sent The Exorcist. Anybody but Billy.
Was there any ever thought, because William Peter Blatty went on to direct the third movie, was there any ever thought that it seemed like he kind of wanted to direct the movie himself, or he wanted to find an established director?
No, he didn't want to direct it himself. He didn't really want to direct the third one, except he had to protect his script writing, which is why so many writers become directors in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what can you tell us about the famed Exorcist Cursed and the production of the film?
Oh, you went right for that right off the beginning.
Yeah, where do you stand on that?
There is no Exorcist curse. Okay, the set burned down. Okay, people died. Okay, a guy lost his toe. Okay, equipment broke down. Okay, stuff happened, but there is no Exorcist curse. Although, frankly, look, if you take any group of people, say 500 or 1,000 people working on a movie between pre-production, production, and post-production, and follow them for 2 or 3 years, and include their families and their friends and their goldfish, something is going to happen statistically to some of them. Now, Ellen Burstyn, who I happen to adore and who I think is our finest actress at the moment, and I think is a very spiritual person, does believe there was negative energy on The Exorcist. But Terry Donnelly, the assistant director, and others of us think it was just a matter of statistics that shit happened.
Sure.
However, if there is a The Exorcist curse, it's on anybody who's tried making a sequel or a prequel. Those are the films that didn't do as well. So we're all holding our breath for The Exorcist Believer that opens on October 6th.
Right.
I think it's interesting that when you hear about the curse, you don't hear about the Iraq stuff. You don't hear about that as much as some of what could be viewed as smaller incidents that happened during the production.
They were in Iraq when somebody tried a military coup, and they couldn't leave the airport. They couldn't leave. They couldn't get out of Iraq. I mean, this is well before Saddam Hussein became famous.
Yeah.
And the coup ended very quickly when a few people confessed, and they were all summarily executed.
Right.
None of this, going to judges like we're doing here with Trump. They just took care of it right in Iraq.
2 days, I think you said in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was difficulty of shooting in Iraq, but it still gave one of the most hauntingly beautiful sequences. And to think that both the publisher wanted to cut the prologue out of the book and Warner Brothers wanted to cut the prologue out of the movie, but it sets the whole stage.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about William Peter Blatty's relationship with William Friedkin on the film? There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, he gets SAG minimum now. Well, Billy and Bill were very good friends, and there was the usual tensions, but nothing especially until Billy Friedkin turned in his final cut of the film and showed it to Bill Blatty, who loved it because it had everything in it that he wanted. But then somebody convinced William Friedkin, it was the head of Warner Brothers, it's a little long. You maybe should take some scenes out of it because it's redundant. And Friedkin did in fact cut some of the scenes, including the one that Bill Blatty considered was most pivotal, which has been restored to the director's cut, which will be released now shortly before the film is 50 years old. And that is a scene on the stairwell between exorcisms where Fathers Marin and Karras are musing as to why the devil is possibly inhabiting this little girl. Why would they do that? And Father Marin, the older one, Max von Sydow, says it is because the devil wants us to doubt ourselves. The devil wants us to ask, if we're this vile, if we're this messy, if we're this awful and evil, how could God possibly love us? That was Bill Blatty's whole reason for writing the book. He wanted to establish the existence of God by establishing the existence of a personified devil. And when that scene went, as well as some other stuff, it made Blatty incensed. Now, he supposedly was ill at the time, so he couldn't go into the editing room and make changes. But there are so many different stories about this. And one I have from one of the newbie editors, Craig McKay, who later edited Silence of the Lambs, so he knows what he's doing, was telling the story about how Blatty was not available to come into the editing room. So how could he have been barred from the editing room, as some people claimed? With a hit, there's all kinds of stories floating around, and they certainly were endemic to The Exorcist. Oh, but later they made up.
They did. Okay. Well, I saw there was a number of lawsuits once the film was released about, Blatty being banned from set or post-production and trying to get extra profits back from Warner Brothers.
Well, this happens all the time. Something Phil D'Antoni, the producer, told me. Phil produced The French Connection and then the 7-Ups. He said, look, these guys are never going to give you an honest count. So just sue them and they'll settle, and that'll save them the expense of going through the books or the embarrassment.
That's one way to do it. There you go. Can you tell us anything about the process for securing the music for the movie? Because that's become such an iconic part of it.
The music wasn't even planned for the movie, but a guy named Mike Oldfield had sent in a demo tape to Warner Brothers, as a lot of people would do because they had a record label at the time. And Billy was going through all sorts of musical shenanigans. He had originally asked Lalo Schifrin to compose a score, and he said Schifrin gave him a score that was bossa nova and Hispanic music, and it just didn't fit. So he literally took the magnetic tape on which the score was recorded, went out the back of Tadeo, which is the sound mixing facility in Hollywood, and threw it across the parking lot and said, that's where your score belongs. Of course, it bothered the people at Warner's because they'd paid for it. They figured he could use it somewhere else. So Billy went looking through record libraries, trying to find the music that worked, and he literally stumbled across Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. They licensed it, they stuck it in, and it, of course, became the Exorcist theme.
Oh, I found this interesting. So, when Billy Friedkin just passed, I kind of went back through his filmography and watched some stuff that I hadn't seen before, Sorcerer and Cruising. And when I was looking over Cruising, and I realized the Paul Bateson story about later when he murdered people and claimed to be cruising around, murdering people in gay clubs. And that's kind of where the spark for Cruising came from. Was that story ever made public during the production of Cruising?
Not while people were alive. Paul Bates was one of the people who worked as an extra in the hospital scene in The Exorcist. And it turned out he had a private life, which was going to the leather bars. And he was also involved, supposedly, in the murder of several of the people in what became known as the CUPI, that is the Circumstances Undetermined Pending Police Investigation, and what became known as, more widely after Gerald Walker's novel, as the Cruising Murders.
Gotcha. Okay.
You're sending me back. I haven't thought about Cruising in a long time.
Yeah, I watched it for the first time the other day. It was quite a trip. And then to get that context added to it, kind of added a whole nother dimension.
It's a very spooky movie. There are several versions running around. I think the one that exists now is the one, okay, this will really drive people crazy. Did you single frame any of the murder sequences?
I don't think so, no.
Go back and do it.
Okay.
There are some real Easter eggs there, although Easter eggs may be a misapplied name.
Yeah.
So we're talking some more single frame inserts. Like, okay, yeah.
Inserts is the
That's
word.
not-
Inserts
guess-
is the word.
Okay.
Okay.
That sailed right past the motion picture rating system. What they didn't like
Right.
was seeing people pretend to do it in the club sequences. So Billy
Right.
had to darken the exposure on the prints. But yeah.
So was there any back and forth with the MPAA getting a rating for The Exorcist? Because I know it was obviously rubbing a lot of religious groups the wrong way, especially coming out the day after Christmas. Was there anything
Yeah.
with the ratings board that where it was
No,
close
it
to
was-
getting an X?
Nope, it was a hard R film. There was no nudity. It was just profanity and some violence. But also, I don't think the religious groups, not the sane ones, really opposed it because it was, after all, the Catholic playbook.
Mhm.
It's one of the
Mhm.
few films outside of Going My Way where priests are the heroes.
Right.
It's very true.
Sure.
Can you speak to any of the effect that acting in this kind of film at such a young age and being exposed to all this gruesome, horrific events had on Linda Blair?
Boredom.
Boredom?
That's the only effect. If you've ever made a movie, well, William Goldman, the great screenwriter and novelist, once said that the most exciting day of your life is your first day on a movie set, and the most boring day of your life is your second day on a movie set. The Exorcist moved very slowly because they were working for most of Linda's scenes in a refrigerated room, and they had to bring the temperature down to the point where it would show breath. There was no CGI in those days. They could only get a couple of shots before the room got too warm, and they had to leave and put the AC back on again. So it was very, very boring. She was on the bed with an electric blanket, tied up supposedly. And the biggest thing about making the movie is simply waiting. Linda Blair was a very centered, very sane, very normal, extremely bright young woman. She's now a very centered, sane, extremely normal, bright older woman whose charity is rescuing pets, which is just a kind of a blessing. So she was able to use her notoriety to do some really good stuff for animals. But there were no ill effects. And in fact, Billy adopted her as a kind of a surrogate father. And although Linda's mother was there, Ellen Burstyn also adopted her as a surrogate mother, and she was very normal and remained so.
So
Sorry.
I guess, oh no.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's a relief.
Yeah.
So what were the expectations around Warner Brothers after, having these fires and the schedule go from 80 to 200 days?
Well, they hoped they had a hit, but you
Yeah.
never know. The only thing that anybody ever knew about it outside of the studio was that 30-second teaser trailer, which was a slow zoom from the poster, which we now all remember. Something almost beyond comprehension is happening to a girl on this street in this house. That was very provocative. People had read the book, but there was an enormous interest in seeing it. But beyond that, Warner Brothers was very, very careful. They didn't want people to see it. Even for this Christmas Day screening that we arranged in Boston, that had to be by special permission of William Friedkin. It only opened in 22 theaters, and somehow people knew. No one to this day knows how you can catch lightning in a bottle, but nobody saw the storm coming. But they did. And that was The Exorcist. After that, of course, it took off like a bat out of proverbial hell.
Right. It was obviously a very new experience for people to see a movie like that. You can find videos of YouTube of interviews after people have gone to their first screening or attempted their first screening often. Do you have any particular memories from your first time seeing the movie or the night of release or anything like that?
Well, I have to disappoint you because I'd read the book, so I knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
But I was also, but I was the poor guy stationed outside the theater to keep only our critics admitted to this special screening. I had to keep any audience members away who might have wandered up. I mean, it was closed to the public. It was Christmas morning, so you can imagine the critics being torn from the bosom of their families to come to a movie about a little girl whose head spins around. But once we got past, I didn't see the movie for several days. Whenever I'd hear a noise, I'd run into the theater. By then it was over.
Oh, okay.
And we left and we walked home and ate our Christmas turkey, and we didn't know we were supposed to throw up. That happened later. And boy, did it ever. People, with any luck, made it outside before they did the Technicolor yawn on the carpet of the movie theaters.
Wow.
And we had some complaints. And that's the funny thing about The Exorcist, because not only did it affect people who were watching the movie, as these people came out ashen-faced after seeing it, the people waiting in line for the next show were primed to be excited the same way, like people waiting for the next ride on the roller coaster.
Right. Yeah.
It kept on building like Topsy. It grew and grew.
It's funny that our movie events nowadays are something like Barbenheimer. I don't know how that really compares to the experience of The Exorcist being released in theaters for the first time.
It's a different age too.
Yeah.
The Exorcist came along at a time when Watergate was dividing the public, when people were not sure what was happening, when parents were afraid that their kids were doing drugs and starting to curse in public. So The Exorcist was a kind of a story about rebellion taking place on various levels of society. In this case, on a spiritual level as well as political and social. We cover that in the book too. We cover all sorts of stuff in The Exorcist Legacy, not just about the first movie, but about all of them and how they kind of fit in with the politics of what was going on in the world at the time.
Okay, interesting.
You mentioned Ellen Burstyn saying there was a dark energy around the production. There's also stories that William Friedkin tried to get an exorcism actually performed on the set to try and ease tensions. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, he had Father Birmingham, who was one of the advisors and also plays a small role in the film as the head of the university, performing an exorcism. They had a lot of priests around too. William O'Malley, who was a priest who plays Father Dyer in the film, Father Karras' best friend, was a priest. He later went back to his day job.
So did filming this really change his perception or personal beliefs on spirituality any?
Well, Billy, he was born Jewish, but it wore off.
Yeah.
I know he had his bar mitzvah, but he was an autodidact, which means he learned by doing and by reading, not by formal education. And he was very easily influenced by whatever he was looking at. He said he made films as a way of asking questions and answering them by the process of making the films. And I think one of those was his relationship with God and his relationship with organized religion. At some point, and I don't know what the point was, he even told Bill Blatty that he had been going to a Catholic mass and was so moved by the spiritualism of it that he took communion. And Blatty said, "That's blasphemy. You're not even a Catholic and you're not baptized. How could you take?" But of course, to anybody who is so moved, people weren't Catholic when Jesus baptized people, were they? And gave them. So it's all in the perception. The power of the film rests because religion has been brainwashing the public, especially Western civilization, for 2,000 years. And the movie simply reaped what the church had been sowing.
Mm-hmm. So do you think those religious undertones are kind of why it's been able to endure for so many years?
It certainly strikes what people believe in. I mean, the glib answer is it scares the hell into people. But there are other reasons for it. I mean, my quick reason for why The Exorcist has remained the scariest film ever, and the people who made it didn't consider it a horror film per se. But if you think of it this way, when you're in the movie theater and you're watching Jason, or you're watching the Frankenstein monster, or you're watching the Mummy, when you go home, the monsters are still in the theater. But when you open your bedroom door, Satan could be in the hall closet. And it's this kind of pervasive fear, this little seed that's in your brain, that makes it, I think, as effective as it is.
That's very true. No, you talked earlier about the struggles to continue and turn The Exorcist into a franchise. Where do you think those films failed? Or do you think there is franchise potential to extend The Exorcist into future films?
Morgan Creek Productions paid William Peter Blatty a lot of money when they bought what was not then a franchise, but which became a franchise, to do Exorcist 3. In fact, in the olden days, 1973, the writer of a script was able to retain the literary rights, and that's what William Peter Blatty did. And so it was he to whom they had to go to make Exorcist 2, The Heretic, and it was he to whom they had to go back and make Exorcist 3. After that, he sold the rights to Morgan Creek, which is involved all the way through all the other films, right up to the new one that's coming out on October 6th. So he sold it, he said, for a large amount of money, and he said he's to blame for The Heretic, which, as we know, is the Fight Club of Exorcist films. You don't talk about The Heretic. But to keep on answering your question, I'm sorry. Franchise is a dirty word. It means that you're going to be rehashing things. Yeah. In fact, they made The Exorcist. Anything after that is simply a fantasia on what the movie is supposed to be about. But Morgan Creek discovered very quickly that unless you have an exorcism in an Exorcist film, it doesn't work. Right. And that's with the problem. They had to do a lot of reshooting and a lot of shifting around to make all the subsequent films work, because he didn't have exorcisms. You're not seeing this. My dog is tearing my office apart. The power of Christ compels you.
Yeah, there we go.
Come on, Louis.
Let's see what that does.
So The Exorcist Believer is coming from the team who created the recent Halloween Legacy sequels, David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. Do you know anything about the involvement they were able to secure from Ellen Bernstein or Linda Blair, William Friedkin? do you know the extent to what that original crew was involved with this?
Billy, zero.
Yeah.
Ellen is a very interesting case. She, and you have to understand, I'm completely biased in her favor. She kept on turning them down until they made an offer that was so large. She said, okay, here's the deal. And she took the money and she used it to build a scholarship program for the Actors Studio, where she's one of the people who runs it. And so however much she may have sold her soul to Exorcist Believer, and I haven't seen the film, so I don't know. She took that money and did something wonderful with it, which is setting up a scholarship fund so that generation upon generation of young actors can have a chance to learn what she learned.
Yeah.
That's pretty holy in its own way. As far as Bill Blatty, well, he's passed, of course. Nobody else is involved with these Exorcist sequels. But I will say, for David Gordon Green's, I think, to really compliment him, he gave me an interview. We did it on email for security purposes a year and a half ago when I was still writing the book, well before he'd even shot the film. And for him to tell me as much as he did, which is in The Exorcist Legacy, essentially when he shouldn't have talked to anybody about it, is a very gracious, I think, and very generous thing. So I have to praise him to the heavens, because he did a wonderful thing. He was able to talk about his film, and I hope perhaps even get it more clear in his mind before he actually made it.
So were you able to see his take on the Halloween series?
I haven't left the house in years. I've been writing book after book, and I haven't. I'm sorry. I know that there's some controversy there, but I'm not an arbiter.
Gotcha. So I was just trying to gain what your expectations were going into the new Exorcist.
I'll buy my ticket like everybody else.
Okay. What you heard didn't dissuade you, definitely.
Look, we're almost related. It's almost home movies at this point. I'm hoping for the best. I don't know. I've seen the trailers like everybody else. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, although crossing may be the wrong thing for an Exorcist movie, but we can, if you want to, talk about my two other books coming out. You can clip and save those for something else.
Yeah, we'd love for you to.
Thank you, because I really need to do it.
No. And where's the best place that we can get you the direct consumers instead of going through Amazon and all that stuff?
For the first time in a long time, The Exorcist Legacy is actually in bookstores, Barnes and Noble, other places. I'm astonished. And if you don't want to go to Amazon, you go to a website called bookfinder.com. One word, Bookfinder. And they're a better search engine for thousands of bookstores all over the world. And you're buying right from the independent bookstores.
Awesome.
Not from Japanese books.
Yeah.
I bought hundreds of books from them. And quite often at a good rate. The publishers may have been closed for COVID, but I kept on typing. And so I had 3 books come out in a row, which makes me sound like a romance writer, but I'm not. It just happens that way. The Exorcist Legacy, of course, the one that came out after that, which is from Applause Books, is called Breaking the Code, Otto Preminger versus Hollywood Censors. Otto Preminger was a very flamboyant filmmaker of the 40s, 50s, 60s. He was Austrian. He was brilliant. He was also a real promoter, a real provocateur. And he made several films which roused the ire of the Motion Picture Production Code, which was Hollywood's censorship organization. So beginning in 1953, he started breaking all the rules. And there were certain things you couldn't do in those days. I mean, literally, if it was a married couple, you had to show them in twin beds. If you showed a bathroom, there was no toilet in the bathroom. This is how strict the code was. And of course, you couldn't use any profanity or any racial stereotypes. In other words, the Hollywood Production Code was probably the first woke thing that Hollywood ever did. I wrote a book about the tangles that Preminger had with the head of the production code and how he eventually wielded all these efforts to break Hollywood censorship until we have what is now the letter rating system that Jack Valenti created. So the book is called Breaking the Code, Otto Preminger versus Hollywood Censors, from Applause Books. And I got to say, I'm very proud of it because it talks about all the stuff he couldn't do. So, of course, the book is dirty. The other one that's coming out in a couple of weeks is called Say Hello to My Little Friend, A Century of Scarface. And that's the Scarface book. It takes the 1932 original that Howard Hawks made for Howard Hughes with Paul Muni, and it contrasts it with the Brian De Palma version of 1983. And I'm pleased to report that Stephen Bauer, who plays Manny in the film, who's Al Pacino's best friend, wrote a foreword to the book and was kind of my guardian angel on the thing. It's a fun book that talks about not only the movies, but about drugs and the law and the history of why this movie that people didn't understand when it came out suddenly became the hero of the hip hop generation. So between The Exorcist Legacy, Otto Preminger versus Hollywood's Production Code, and Scarface, I'm kind of going to take the rest of the year off.
Yeah. I think you've earned that.
Thank you for asking.
Stuff.
Thank you for asking about all this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, you've been around the entertainment industry in this kind of golden age of the auteur filmmaker of the 70s. What do you make of the current climate of guys like Christopher Nolan and Martin Scorsese butting heads with the big studios and trying to get their visions out into the public when it seems like a lot of these movies are being made by committee?
It's harder and harder to do what you want to do, even if you have the credentials of Martin Scorsese. They say that you only get to make the films they let you make. And that certainly is the case now. But they were a factory back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It's just as some brilliant people like John Huston and Ernest Lubitsch and others emerged from them. Most of the stuff that you see, you wouldn't want to see. It's on the off hours on TCM. But what the major talented filmmakers are doing today, like Tarantino and others, are using their own personalities to make movies. But I think they're using their personalities more in getting to make the movies by leaning on agents and leaning on producers and leaning on studio executives. They've branded themselves in ways that even Alfred Hitchcock and Steven Spielberg never did. That's exciting. The few people who are allowed to bring their vision to the screen. But by and large, artificial intelligence has been at work in the film industry for years, not writing scripts by computer, but rather dictating a formula that all scripts and films have to follow. That's the danger. It's giving the audience what they already have. And that's why revenues are down. The number of ticket sales is down. The revenues are up because you're paying $15, $25 for a ticket, but the number of ticket sales is down. John Houseman, who was a great producer and a great talent, he's the one who got Herman J. Mankiewicz sober long enough to co-write Citizen Kane. John Houseman told me, in the old days, they used to help a producer make a movie. Now they dare him. And I think that's become the case.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good note to go out on. I appreciate you taking the time. It was great to meet Louis.
I'll feed him now. It's been fun, guys. Thanks for being so aware of everything. I appreciate the chance to blather on like this. Please try not to make me look like too much of an asshole.
No, for sure.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Be in touch.
For more, visit internetkilledthevideostore.com.